Okay, so axial musculature, I think everyone's probably pretty good on. Everyone found their myomeres?
Yep.
Epaxial, hypaxial muscles? Okay. Horizontal septum, etc. The red fibers and white fibers, I just wanted to point those out because they're really cool. If you just look at this dark band of fibers here, those are the red fibers, these are the white fibers. And the red fibers are used for just the average swimming that the shark does as it goes through the water. They're basically aerobic fibers, those of you who have physiology, so they're able to continually maintain contraction of those muscles as they swim. All the white fibers, which is actually the bulk of the musculature, is used for fast bursts, so either escaping from predators or making a burst to capture prey.
So we consider those fast and slow twitch muscle fibers then?
That's exactly what we're talking
That is
about. Yeah, yep, exactly. So these are the fast twitch, these are slow twitch fibers.
And so signals send when to use each set of muscles?
The brain basically regulates that and controls it. Okay. If we follow the epaxial muscles forward here over the branchial region, we would call them epibranchial muscles. Okay. So I'm just going to remind you. If we follow the hypaxial muscles forward below the branchial region, we call them hypobranchial
And they
muscles.
only extend through the branchial region. They stop just at the end of the branchial region?
Well, they stop when they get to the skull.
Pardon me,
Posteriorly. Posteriorly, yeah, then they just become continuous with the myomeres of the trunk. Basically at the pectoral girdle.
They just smoothen and just become...
Well, the pectoral girdle is a barrier, especially ventrally. Not so much dorsally, but ventrally. That coracoid bar would be the boundary between the hypobranchial muscles in front and just the regular trunk muscles behind. Okay, so let's take a look at those hypobranchial muscles. And I think most people got to these. This is probably the best view here in this particular shark. But these are the muscles that run from the coracoid bar here to the mandible. And to see them, you first have to reflect the intermandibularis and interhyoideus. Okay, so those we're not dealing with yet. We're just getting rid of them. To look at these deeper muscles. And we see one that runs right down the midline here. Okay, what's that? This is the coracomandibular. Okay, right in the middle is coracomandibular. And we can flip that back and see on its deep surface here a kind of dark blob, and that would be
Thyroid.
the thyroid gland. Okay. Then there's a pair of muscles here that are on either side, deep to the coracomandibular. Can you see it all?
It's all right.
If you sneak around over there next to Clyde, you might have a little bit better view. Okay. Here's a pair of muscles. Those are the coracohyoids. Okay. And the coracohyoids are continuous with these paired kind of triangular muscles here that attach to the coracoid bar, and these are the coracoarcules. Okay. And together, the coracoarcules and coracohyoids are called the rectus cervicis, which means the straight muscle of the throat or the neck. That's would be a better way to put it. Okay. The last set of the hypobranchial muscles are really deep. And you find them by going in here lateral to the coracoarcule and separating away the gills and looking way deep in there. And these aren't going to show up super well, but you can see muscles that run up to the branchial arches from the deep surface of the coracoarcules, and those are the coracobranchial muscles. So mostly you should just know that if you see anything way deep in there running up towards the branchial arches, that's going to be a coracobranchial. Okay. So those are the hypobranchial muscles. And again, those are axial muscles just coming forward under the branchial region. Okay. Appendicular muscles, they're easy. I'll kind of skip them. They're there on the fins, whatever. Okay. Not going to worry about them because the branchiomeric muscles are more challenging. I want to make sure we have a chance to take a look at them. Okay. So for the branchiomeric muscles, I'm going to go to which shark was going to be good for that. A couple of different ones. Is this the guy I wanted to look at? This one. Yeah, this guy. Okay, we'll look at him for now. Okay, so remember that the branchiomeric muscles are organized by arch. Mandibular arch, hyoid arch, branchial arches. Okay, don't forget that. Remember that. And that ties in with the skeletal stuff that we've done. So in the mandibular arch, ventrally, we can see this muscle that runs across the midline of the branchial region from one side to the other with the big midline raphe, and that would be the
Mandibularis.
intermandibularis, exactly. So that's the ventral muscle of the mandibular arch. If we kind of peel back the skin here and look just in this region of the jaw joint, we see a big, massive muscle here that's running basically from the adductor mandibular process of the palatal quadrate down to the mandibular cartilage. That's the jaw closing muscle, and that would be the
Abductor mandibulae.
mandibulae. So the thing that closes the jaw is what it literally means, the adductor mandibular. Everyone see that? For what it's worth, that muscle is actually the muscle that is used to make fake scallops.
What?
Yes.
Make what?
Fake scallops, things that are sold as scallops in the store, can actually be little cross sections of shark adductor mandibulae muscles. Okay. If we look here, notice there's a hole in the side of the head, which I can get a probe into. What's that hole?
Spiracle.
Spiracle, okay. And just above the spiracle, there is a muscle that runs down kind of to the wall of the spiracle, right here. That's the spiracularis muscle. And in front of that, there is another muscle we can see running down here that goes all the way down to the palatal quadrate. And it's a little hard to see, but you basically can follow its fibers down past the spiracle. Okay, and that's how you can tell it's a separate muscle. And that is the levator palato-quadrati. Okay,
Quadrati.
yes, that elevates the palatal quadrate. Okay. The last muscle of the mandibular arch, we're not going to see. It's the preorbitalis, and it's a big muscle that's in the floor of the orbit. And if you actually expose the orbit and look in there, you'll see it. When we do dissect the orbit later in the semester, we'll take a look at it. So I wouldn't worry about it now if you don't get to it. Okay. So that's the mandibular arch. Then we get to the hyoid arch. Okay. The hyoid arch ventrally has the interhyoideus. And this is a sheet of muscle that stretches across from the hyoid arch of one side, namely ceratohyal, basihyal, to the hyoid arch of the other side. Many of you struggled with separating those two layers. They are pretty tough, but these folks actually did a pretty nice job. We can see, I think this is the one, yes, that there is, in fact, I can get it there, another layer underneath. That's interhyoideus there. Okay. You see that? So, intermandibularis, interhyoideus. The interhyoideus is part of the hyoid arch, connecting the hyoid arch skeletal elements. Okay. Another major muscle of the hyoid arch is the levator hyomandibulae. And this is a muscle that you can see if you come back to the spiracle. Remember that the hyoid arch is behind the spiracle. So we look right behind the spiracle, and there's a big muscle right there running down to the hyomandibula, this muscle here, and that is the levator hyomandibulae. And it elevates the hyomandibula. If you continue back a little bit behind that, you'll notice here's the first gill slit, here's the spiracle. Everything between the spiracle and the first gill slit is hyoid arch. Okay. The levator hyomandibulae is only part of that, and then behind that we get to a kind of a thin layer of muscle that runs dorsally and then ventrally around and kind of closes that first gill pouch. And those are the dorsal and ventral hyoid constrictors. Okay. So they're constrictor muscles of the gill pouch. Okay. That's the hyoid arch. Okay. See, it's a piece of cake. As with all the dissections we'll do, there's a lot of work just actually doing the dissection. The number of parts is actually considerably less, as you might notice, than on a lot of these other labs. So that's a good thing, but it just takes a while to get there. Branchiomeric muscles would be for the branchial arches. And just as in the hyoid arch, when we get back between or behind the first gill slit, we're into the branchial region, and there's thin layers of muscle there that are the branchial constrictors. So this would be dorsal branchial constrictor here and ventral branchial constrictor here. Those are just the muscles that close the gill pouch. There's a little muscle here that, I'll try to put it back in place, a little triangular shaped muscle that sits right like this, that comes from the epibranchial muscles down to the tops of the gill arches. Do you see this little triangular muscle right in there? Okay. That is called, anyone? The cucullaris. And it is actually homologous to
really?
the trapezius.
Nice.
Yeah. So the trapezius muscle in mammals, which we will get to, is homologous with the cucullaris of sharks. It's a branchiomeric muscle, okay, innervated by a cranial nerve. Okay. So yeah, good job.
Thanks.
This homology just leapt out of you there.
It just kind of looked like it would be.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so that's the cucullaris. If we, is this my shortcut I wanted to do this on? Yeah. Okay, if we kind of spread the cucullaris away from the epibranchial musculature, we can open up a big space in here that you guys are not going to really be able to see well at all now, but I'll just kind of at least point out that there's a space there. Okay, you see that space? This is a big venous sinus. This sinus is called the anterior cardinal sinus. Do you remember the anterior cardinal vein we saw in lampreys? Basically, this is a similar thing in these guys. And the anterior cardinal sinus allows you to look down at the floor of it at the top of the branchial arches. And when you look in there, and again, I'm not going to try to show you because it's just so small, it's going to be hard to see, but if you look in there, you will see little muscles that run within each arch between the ceratobranchial element and the, what did I say, between the epibranchial element and the pharyngobranchial element, and across that little angle, that muscle is called the lateral interarcual, interarcual between parts of an arch. And then a little further around dorsally, between the pharyngobranchial of one arch and the pharyngobranchial of the next arch forward, there's another little muscle, and that's called the dorsal interarcual. Okay. So again, you're going to have our time seeing it if I try to show you in here, but just dig down deep into that area after you separate cucullaris away from the epibranchial musculature, and you'll see them. Okay. Two more muscles that are listed there that are, I think, going to be a little hard for us to see on any of the sharks that are available to me right at the present moment. Yes. So I'll just tell you about them. But if you look at the gills here within one of the branchial pouches, that's the interbranchial septum that the gills sit on. And do you remember the gill rays when we were looking at the skull, those little filaments that kind of ran out from the gill arches? Those support that interbranchial septum. If you scrape off the gills here and look at the actual interbranchial septum itself, you will see muscle running through it, and that muscle is the interbranchial muscle. And then last but not least, if you go snip, snip, right through the angle of a branchial arch and cut at the joint between the epibranchial above and the ceratobranchial below, there's a little muscle that crosses that joint, and that's the branchial adductor muscle, just like there's an adductor mandibulae for the jaws. For each of the branchial arches, there's a little muscle there.
Adductor, not ab.
AD, adductor, yeah, for closing it. Okay. So that was very quick, I know, but we basically